Greetings from the veteran. This is a video about my US Pacific focused, Japan focused strategy in Global War 36 version 4. I first want to Japan can earn, I believe, to 4 plus 4 strategic objective victory points plus the city of Tokyo, so 5, and if they capture Nanking, 6, and I think Calcutta is a potential city for the Japanese. That could be 7 points, and Sydney could also be 8 points for the Japanese Empire, and obviously that would also take away in Calcutta, Nanking, and Sydney. That would take away 3 victory points from the Allies. So I think Japan is a very big enemy, and America is best suited to fight them. And they're best suited to fight them with a focus from the beginning of the game, knowing that they're going to smash the Japanese Navy and then control the Pacific waters and conquer and retake any islands that the Japanese have conquered. And the quicker they get the Navy out of the way, then the more time they have to conquer different islands and maybe recapture the Chinese coast, securing points for the KMT and for the Nanking. Maybe the Americans super late game, if Japan is out of the way, they're blockading Japan, and or landing on the Russian coast if they absolutely need to. Reconquering Southeast Asia along with the islands and the Philippines, which is likely lost each game to the Japanese. And basically I feel like America has a lot to do in the Pacific, and Japan starts with a really big navy and they just grow it throughout the game, especially if they have control of China, and then later gain control of Far East Command and or the Dutch islands. Then Japan keeps their starting navy, which is bigger than the U.S., and they just continue to build it, and they have a larger income, and they continue to build it. And no matter in which fashion they really do, they've researched large ship construction, improved construction. They're just going to continue building their navy. And America, even if they devote a significant amount of their resources to fighting Japan, they're just not going to be able to defeat the Japanese Navy, because Japan just starts a leg up on them, and if Japan has a large income, then Japan will just keep their navy stronger. And yeah, so with the Pacific focus, I think the U.S. tech program should be kept simple, and I would only suggest to upgrade the factory in San Francisco so you have 5 tech roles. I'm not going for the tech point. I think there's too many irrelevant and difficult techs that you would have to start rolling for as soon as possible, including heavy strategic bombers and strategic rockets are both 9+ techs that don't do you any good fighting Japan. And because they're 9+ techs, they would be techs you need to devote to rolling for since the beginning of the game, the beginning of your first tech rolls as the United States, and along with jet fighters. My focus this game that I'm playing now in my solo game has been long range aircraft, amphibious doctrine, improved construction, improved factories, and advanced artillery. With amphibious doctrine, I get to not be forced to have to build marines and use all my starting infantry on regular transports, which I so choose to because I start with 4 or 5, or I start with at least 5. And proof construction is an obvious one. I'll build all of my ships for cheaper. And then improved factories gets me extra build slots. And if I build a factory, say in the Philippines later, or in Hawaii, then I get extra production out of there as well. And this improved factories gives me extra build slots for my navy, my ships too. So if I want to build a crap ton of subs or a crap ton of destroyers per se, especially once I've researched improved construction, then I can do that. So those are the 5 main techs I'm going for, and I want to focus on the early game. And advanced subs is not one of them because submarines in this game take a hit compared to V4 because they do not help defend your fleet past round 1. Once round 1 is done, the submarine is forced to submerge. So that's part of the reason why I don't care about advanced subs. And large ship construction does require an 8 or greater. And I want to build my fleet early, and I want to build my capital ships early because they take a lot of time. Let me come back over here. So, capital ships take 3 turns to build, right? And so, I want to start the game building my capital ships. And then be ready for war, to move out to sea, or try to be ready as soon as the US enters the war. I want to put as much pressure on Japan as possible, as early as possible. This is going to highly stress Japan, and they will be likely have their attentions divided and be wanting to build and use ground troops, but also navy to fight you, and eventually with a very, very large focus on Japan, the United States, and their economy and their early commitment is going to overwhelm and overrun the Japanese, in my opinion, and in my experience. I have played a few games of version 3 that I did a naval focus with the Americans in the Pacific, and I was able to knock out the Japanese Navy and then blockade Japan and reconquer Dutch islands and such. And it was very effective. And in fact, in my previous game as the Americans, it was a version 3 game again. So I did not bring the U.S. Atlantic Navy immediately to Panama and then through the Panama Canal to the Pacific. Instead, Germany influenced Argentina, and the Americans did some bad naval positioning. They wanted to threaten Spain, but then they built units, loaded transports, and ended up taking a few turns coming down to South America with most of the Navy, fighting some German subs and Argentinian German units turned German from Argentina, Navy-wise, which blocked the way, and it took a good number of rounds before the Atlantic Navy was able to join the Pacific, and before I fully decided to focus Pacific. And meanwhile, Japan had conquered China early game, and then in one turn, they conquered, I believe, it's either the Dutch islands, and then the next turn they conquered Calcutta, or they conquered Calcutta, and then the next turn they conquered the Netherlands East Indies. And Japan just ended up being a monster with a lot of income, and Italy was neutral that game. Italy brought their navy to reinforce the Japanese Navy in the Pacific, and Italy was lend-leasing Japan a fighter a turn while neutral. And so I was actually also facing the might of the Italians behind Japan. So Japan had a couple extra carriers, and Italian fighters ended up landing on them. And yeah, that was a gig, and the Americans ended up not being able to outclass the Japanese Navy by the end of the game, and therefore they weren't able to command. Like, if say an American fleet was here at the Carolines, then Japan could be just off the coast of Japan and threaten American supply lines. And if the Americans tried to strike, say, the Philippines, then Japan counterattack, recapture the Philippines with whatever forces the Americans committed, and it would be a dud and a failed expedition with the Americans. So I want to go over start of the game. Americans have 6 IPP a turn. So what I do is, like I said, I would like to upgrade the medium factory to a major in San Francisco. I'll do that turn 1. Give me that 5th tick roll. And then if I did this again, what I ended up doing was building 3 fleet carriers in this solo game. If I did this strategy again, I would probably take out one of these fleet carriers and not build it, and then rely on one of these. Obviously starts in production on the production chart at stage 3, so it's actually only $10 and 2 turns to complete. And then you add a second one. You start with a few aircraft, and obviously you fly and rail units from the east to the west. And my thought was to build up to 3 fleet carriers in this game, though, and I have at this point completed the carriers and completed enough aircraft to land on them. It is the start of January 41, turn 10, and Americans have 3 fleet carriers, 2 heavy cruisers, 2 battleships, 2 subs, 3 destroyers off of Hawaii with 3 fighters, 2 tacticals on Hawaii, 1 medium bomber on Hawaii, 2 naval transports off of Hawaii, 3 infantry, 1 artillery, 1 AA, 1 militia in Hawaii, and they also have a light cruiser, destroyer, and sub in San Fran Bay, built last turn, along with the 6th aircraft for the 3rd Fleet Carrier fighter. And obviously, coming soon from the Panama Canal is the Atlantic Fleet, which is here. The entire Atlantic Fleet consists of 5 destroyers, 2 light cruisers, 1 heavy cruiser, 2 battleships, and 1 fleet carrier. Once this Navy makes it across, I'll have aircraft built in San Fran ready for that fleet carrier. But and then now with the heavy ships and aircraft purchased, I will have. I'll just be cranking out destroyers and a couple subs, likely. Cannon fodder and potential blockers in the Pacific if need be. Another key one is to move your ships away from the Philippines as soon as possible. I just made it to 35 IPP in this solo game, so I just moved the transport up to Guam and the destroyer out to Wake. The main goal again is to attempt to destroy the Japanese Navy and to capture any islands they take and to blockade Japan if possible. Once America commits 5 transports to the Pacific, it's gonna be unlikely that they capture Tokyo or all of Japan, just due to Japan's abilities at dug-in defense and all of that. And that would leave the Commonwealth to defend themselves in Africa, which I think they can and should be doing. They should be able to defend Gibraltar and the Suez, I feel like. And the British should also be able to defend London, I think. And if Great Britain is doing well and not threatened by the Italians much or whatnot, and the Italians do go to war, I feel like Great Britain, if they dedicate resources to it, and maybe it's a little bit later, I feel like the British should be able to capture Rome without American support. Maybe mid to late game, the Americans can be sending some Lend-Lease fighters or something to the British in the specific strategy. But yeah, that's gonna be it, and this is my video on the US Pacific strategy in 36 V4. Good luck to all you guys, and see you later.